Fukushima number 2 nuclear power plant. Already, people have almost all evacuated from the 10-kilometer radius. Now, we are requesting that everybody move out from the 10-kilometer radius from the number 2 plant. We are making every effort possible so that no further explosion or no further leakage of radiative material would happen. And the people at the power plant are carrying out operation to inject water to cool the reactors, despite they are putting themselves in a very dangerous situation. So in that sense, we hope that we can avoid further radiation leakage. And I would like to ask the nation, although this is an incident of great concern, but I request that you act very calmly. With that, I would like to end my request and message to the Japanese public. You have not talked about the number 2 reactor. I believe the number 2 reactor is in a serious situation. Rather than talking about each individual reactor, there are several things happening at these power plants. So we are looking at the total picture in planning our response. So rather than talking about each individual reactor, I have talked about the whole picture. I believe reports on the individual reactors would come from the Tokyo Electric Power Company.
That was a special message from the Prime Minister. Next, we have a press conference by Chief Cabinet Secretary Yukio Edano. Following the Prime Minister's special message, I would like to share some information with you. This morning, some new developments have been observed since the last time I held a news conference. For specific timing and values, Tokyo Electric Power Company is going to announce those specific and accurate figures, so I limit myself in giving you an overall information. First of all, I would like to talk about number 4 reactor. Number 4 reactor is now seeing a fire going on. At the time of the quake, the number 4 reactor was out of operation. There's no fuel rods in the reactor, but used spent fuels are still inside the number 4 reactor. And such spent fuels are heated and hydrogen was generated, and the hydrogen explosion that we observed for number 1 and number 3 reactors seems to have occurred for number 4 reactor. So number 4 reactor is currently burning. 1 and number 3 reactors, outer building were blown off. But it seems that for number 4 reactor, such fallen objects fell inside the number 4 reactor. Well, hydrogen is being generated, so we assume that the radioactive substances are also being released. Number 4 reactor is no more housed in the outer building, so it seems that the substances are coming out from the number 4 reactor. We are doing making utmost effort to put off fire, and also still continuing to cool down the number 4 reactor. With regard to number 2 reactor, a sound of blast was heard this morning. It was 30 minutes after the incident of number 4 reactor, that was around 6:30 a.m. today. As for the second reactor, the hole was observed in the number 2 reactor. So we've been saying to the public that there's very little possibility that hydrogen explosion would occur at number 2 reactor. This happened when I was holding a press conference this morning. The part of the suppression chamber seems to have caused the sound of blast, and a little amount of radioactive substance is assumed to be released to the outside.
And it is said that a smoke-like stream is seen from the number 2 reactor building, but probably the damage has been found where hydrogen and water come to contact, and I believe that this steam could be hydrogen. And so I am informing you based on what we've heard right before this briefing. So 1, 2, and 3 reactors, water injection operation is continuing. And so far, for all 3 reactors, water injection is continuing smoothly, and we believe that cooling is effectively done. The next problem will be how to maintain this cooling, and also we need to deal with that issue as well as the fire in number 4 reactor. As for radioactive material and the radiation level, some time has passed, but as of 10:22 a.m., according to the monitoring that has been done at that time, between reactor number 2 and 3, 30 millisievert, and at 3, 400 millisievert, and at reactor number 4, 100 millisievert were the values that were monitored. Rather, they were all millisieverts. The figures that I've given were millisieverts, which is larger than the microsieverts that has been used so far. So now we are talking about levels that can impact human health. I would like all of you to embrace this information calmly. but these are readings taken near the area where we believe that the release of radioactive substances is happening. The further away you get from the power plant or reactor, the value should go down. So as of 6 a.m., the staff, among the 800 staff that remained in the power plant, all but 50 who are directly involved in injecting water to cool the reactors have been evacuated. And as I've said, we have heard that water injection operation is still continuing smoothly. The situation that I'm reporting is a very high concern to all of you, and I regret that we are reporting this, but in preparing for a bad scenario, we have asked you to evacuate from the 20-kilometer radius from the plant. Now that we see these new developments, as the Prime Minister has said in his message, from the 20 to 30-kilometer radius area, we are asking you to remain indoors. Do not go outside, but stay indoors. And when staying indoors, please keep the windows shut. Do not use ventilation equipments, and if you are to hang your laundry, please keep them indoors. The further away you move from the power plants, the radiation level will become lower. So beyond the 20-kilometer radius, the radiation level should be reduced quite much so that the harm to human health would be minimal or none at all. But still, of course, the radiation spread will depend on the wind speed and wind direction. So please make sure that you stay indoors so that you are not exposed to any radiation that may come your way. And I'm holding this news conference after our cabinet decision. At the cabinet meeting, we have talked about ordinary matters, and also we have discussed what we have learned already, and the whole cabinet is getting together to deal with this situation. Also, we have talked about rescue operations and assistance that are necessary for the earthquake-stricken areas. With this, I would like to end my comments.
At this moment, is pressure vessel being damaged? There's no possibility. How does the government assess the possibility of pressure vessels or container vessels being damaged? How do you see the possibility of the impact spreading to the metropolitan area? Number 1, number 2, number 3 reactors. For these reactors, we are in the process of injecting water. So a certain level of water injection operation has been maintained. And for further details of such a water injection operations, please contact Tokyo Electric Power Company. So and the pressure has also been stabilized at a certain level, and we must do our utmost effort to maintain this level of pressure in the reactors. You mentioned about the fire in the number 4 reactor. Is a fire in the number 4 reactor more serious than the number 2 incident? Well, I mentioned about number 4 reactor first because the incident occurred earlier than the number 2 incident. That's why I mentioned or talked about number 4 reactor first. suppression chamber, but is there any damage done to the container vessel of number 2 reactor? I've got a report that there is a very high probability that some portion of container vessel was damaged. Number 1, number 2, number 3 reactors. In these reactors, radiation levels from these reactors have a very little possibility of doing harm on human health. A fire is going on, and the fire means here is an ordinary fire. Just like other reactors, the number 4 reactor is emitting heat. As a result, the radioactive substance is likely to be released from the number 4 reactor. The fire that we are seeing at number 4 reactor is not the type of reactor, the fire that ignite some hazardous materials, but the operators are now working on to extinguish fire at number 4 reactor as well. With regard to the evacuation of residents, the people living in 20-kilometer radius continue to be advised to evacuate, but those who are living in 30-kilometer radius are told to stay indoors, right? Some experts say that the people living in 30-kilometer radius also should be told to evacuate. We are listening to the various opinions from the experts, and the final decision was made by the Prime Minister. Currently, we are studying what is the safest measure to be taken. Considering the current condition, we are analyzing what's going on, and based on the experts' opinions, we are now asking the people living in 30-kilometer radius from the plant to stay indoors. Well, the farther you get away from the plant, the safer it is, but considering the current level of radiation readings, we decided to ask the people in 20-kilometer radius to evacuate, and those in 30-kilometer radius to stay indoors based on the opinions of the experts.
I'm from Jishitsushin. For 2, 3, and 4 reactors, the radiation reading, I believe, are quite high. Is there any connection between damage that could have been caused to the number 2 reactor containment vessel? Well, we cannot say for sure, but reactor number 4 explosion could have caused this very high reading. For the number 2 reactor, or for number 1 and number 3, it is not as stable as number 1 and number 3, but the water injection is working to a certain level for number 2 reactor, and we have heard an explosive sound, but we did not see sudden jumps in the radiation reading right after that. If the number 4 fire continues, what could happen? Here in Tokyo and also on site, we are making every effort possible to extinguish the fire. Basically, as I am repeating myself, but the spent fuel is not going to catch fire in the general sense. The fire is being caused in the building area. But of course, it is better to extinguish the fire as early as possible, because we don't want the temperature to go up. If heat is created, it may also cause radioactive material from being released. So, is there any possibility of radioactive material being released because of this fire and damage to the building? There is a possibility that a certain amounts could have been released. But I would like the Tokyo Electric Power Company to give the actual figures. But the current high readings, we believe, are from reactor number 4 fire. We believe that reactor number 2 has not contributed greatly to the fluctuation in the radiation readings. The Sandiku coast area and also for the metropolitan area people, what do you advise us to do? Well, basically, as the Prime Minister has said, first of all, people living in the 20 to 30 kilometer radius area, we want you to remain indoors, do not go outside. But radioactive substances, as was said in past briefings, minimal amounts can spread to very far areas. However, these are at levels that may not cause harm to human health because, of course, the farther away you go, the radiation level would be lower. So based on that knowledge, we want you to keep calm and act calm so we can continue with our daily lives. Well, yes. In the Onagawa plant also, we see some radiation levels reading. However, it is at a level that will not cause damage to human health. So that is why we are not asking people who are living in the area to stay indoors. It's only for the Fukushima power plants. For people in the 20 to 30 kilometers radius, I would like to read out the town or city names that fall into this area. There are some towns that overlap with the outside area, or some towns will overlap with the 20 kilometer radius evacuation area. So I would like to read out towns or municipalities that may fall into this 30 kilometer radius area. Tamura City, Minami Soma City, Hirono Town, Naraha Town, Tomioka Town, Kawauchi Village, Okuma Town, Futaba Town, Namiya Town, Katsurao Village, Iidate Village, Iwaki City.
In case of Iwaki, only the northwestern part of the city falls in the category of this target zone. According to a part of the mass media report, the Secretary General of IAEA, Mr. Amano, held a conference, and he said that the Japanese government asked for the dispatch of the experts to Japan. I'm not aware of any decision by the Japanese government asking the dispatch of the experts officially, but after the quake hit our country, we've been asking support and help to various countries in the world. And we like to also make use of the various kinds of expertise from the international organizations. There was a report that neutron radiation was discovered or detected. That was for number 3 reactor. That was because of nature of the number 3 reactor that neutron radiation was observed because of the nature of the number 3 reactor. of course, it's better not to have a neutron, but a very small amount of neutron was detected. That was, I think, was the content of the report we received. You assume that radiation level is going up because of the fire of the number 4 reactor, but how long do you think it will take to extinguish this fire? Is it a very serious fire or just a minor fire? On site right now, the people in charge are trying to take actions, corrective actions. Are you going to continue the injection of water? After extinguishing fire, are you going to continue to operation of injection of water? Yes. Thank you very much for your questions. That was a news conference by the Secretary, Chief Cabinet Secretary. Chief Cabinet Secretary said that the monitoring post reading at 10:22 a.m. at number 1 Fukushima nuclear power plant was 30 millisieverts in between number 2 and number 3 reactors, and around number 3 reactor, the reading was 400 millisievert and 100 millisieverts at around number 4 reactors. This is much higher than the microsieverts. Millisievert is much higher than microsieverts. So it's likely that this will cause some impact on human health. Prime Minister Naoto Kan delivered a special message to the public, Japanese public, at 11 o'clock and asked those residents living in 20-kilometer radius from the plant to evacuate, and also those who are living in the 30 kilometers radius from the plant to stay indoors. The government said that the number 4 reactor, the fire is going on, and the possibility is increasing that more radioactive substance will be released to the environment. Most of the residents who live in 20-kilometer radius from the plant have already completed evacuation. And the government called for all the residents living in 20-kilometer radius from the plant to evacuate. Prime Minister also said that those who are living in a 30-kilometer radius from the plant are also advised to stay indoors, in home or in offices, to minimize the impact of the leakage. Prime Minister Kan also said that the people are doing their best to prevent further explosions from taking place. And Tokyo Electric Power Company operators are doing their best to contain this incident, and they are continuing the injection of water.
We would now like to ask Mr. Mizuno about the situation. First of all, the Chief Cabinet Secretary's briefing. He talked about the radiation reading at the monitoring points. He talked about millisievert level, not microsieverts. The highest he mentioned was 400 millisieverts. What is this compared to the microsieverts? Well, it means that it's 1,000 times larger. So in the history of nuclear power plants, we can say that a very grave situation is happening. 400 millisieverts or 100 millisieverts mean that this will harm human health. For example, if in male bodies, 100 millisieverts radiation can cause this person to become infertile, whether it's male or female. If 500 millisieverts or more if a person is exposed to this, the lymphocytes in the blood will decrease. So 400 millisieverts around number 3 100 around number 4. So if there are people around this area, if you are not protected with protective gear, it will affect your health. So just in an instance, you mean? Not a long time. Yes, in a very short time. Radiation waves can affect the genes. And we hear that 50 staffs are operating in the area. I believe they have protective gear. So if you have protective gear, you will be protected? Well, yes, I believe they are managing the exposure level. However, if you are exposed to this radiation without any protective gear, you will see effects of radiation. I don't think there's anybody in the area because people in the 20-kilometer radius has been ordered to evacuate. If there are people still remaining in the 20-kilometer radius, we want to ask you to immediately move outside of the 20-kilometer radius. And people in the 20 to 30-kilometer radius, you are now ordered to stay indoors. And that is because the fire in the number 4 reactor, the smoke from the fire may contain a high level of radiation. And of course, as the smoke, it will move upwards and it will spread. And it may spread to 20 or maybe 30 kilometers away from the power plant. So please remain indoors. And as the Chief Cabinet Secretary said, close the windows, don't use any ventilation equipment. If you have any laundry already hanging outside, don't take them indoors. So once again, what are the precautions? As we've heard from the Chief Cabinet Secretary, people in the 20 to 30 kilometer radius area, make sure that you are safely indoors. If you are at work, please stay at the office. If you are outside, please evacuate to any nearby buildings. If possible, stay inside a concrete building. But of course, remain indoors in your house even if it isn't a concrete building. Please make sure that the windows are tightly shut. Even if it's cold, do not use air conditioning. We don't want air exchange between the indoors and outdoors because the outdoor air may contain radioactive material. You don't want that coming inside the house. So in order to avoid that, close the windows and do not use air conditioning. Don't hang your laundry outdoors. If you already have laundry being hung outdoors, do not take them inside. So that precaution is for people living within the 20 to 30 kilometer radius. That is right. If you are outside right now, please evacuate to a nearby building. And in that case, for example, if you were wearing a jacket, make sure that you dust off your jacket and anything in your hair, please dust that off as well. And then go indoors. We have heard from the Chief Cabinet Secretary. A new information was that there is a fire that broke out at reactor number 4. So what is happening right now is at reactor number 4.
Among these 4 reactors, the situation of number 4 reactor is very dangerous. We have very little information about this, but the number 4 reactor was out of operation at the time of quake. And according to the explanation, there's no fuel rods anymore inside the number 4 reactor. The spent fuels are usually submerged into the water because although the fuel rods are spent, they are emitting heat, so the heat must be removed. And spent fuel rods are emitting radioactivity, so they must be submerged in water. And the radiation leakage should be prevented by water. But the spent fuels are heated and cause hydrogen explosion. What I'm going to say from now is based on assumption, but if the spent fuels are totally covered by water, and water is circulating, they do not cause any heat, but the quake destroy the power supply, and the heat exchange may become impossible. So, in that case, the water is evaporated, So there is a possibility that some of the spent fuels are exposed. And if they are heated, furthermore, zirconium coating may react to oxygen, giving rise to hydrogen, and that might have led to hydrogen explosion, and that might cause the fire, and this may be causing the radioactive substances to go outside. What kind of countermeasures can we take? We have to extinguish fire. That's very important. But the radiation level is quite high, so the firefighters must wear protective clothing. Otherwise, they're exposed to radiation, high level of radiation. The government explained to us that the Tokyo Electric Power Company is now taking measures against that. But the fire must be extinguished. First of all, that's the situation of number 4 reactor. How about number 1, 2, 3 reactors? We've heard that the water injection operation is going on for these 3 reactors. Water is being injected in number 1, 2, 3 reactors, but in case of number 2 reactor, at around 6 a.m., a blast was heard around the suppression chamber. And it is believed that this blast caused damage to suppression chamber and causing the leakage of radioactive substance. But the radioactive substance leakage from number 4 reactor is considered to be more serious. That's why the reading of radiation level of about 400 millisievert near number 3 and number 4 reactors. Millisievert is a unit of measurement that is 1,000 times higher than microsievert, and this could cause the harm to humans. We don't think that there are residents currently staying near these reactors, but they must be evacuated to safer locations. The government says that the residents living in 20-kilometer radius from the plant must be evacuated, and those who are living in 30-kilometer radius must stay indoors. Fukushima number 1 power plant is located on the Pacific side of Fukushima Prefecture. We asked Mr. Mizuno for further explanation. What's the prospect for the future, and what kind of the things that we have to pay attention to? So the issue for us is how we can extinguish the fire for number 4 reactor as soon as possible, and the operators must wear protective gear, and I think that the firefighting operation will be done by TEPCO operators.
We need to extinguish the fire as soon as possible. We have not heard about what is actually being done. However, immediate fire extinguishing operation is very important. Now, the people from the 20-kilometer radius have been ordered to evacuate, and now from the 20 to 30-kilometer radius, people living in this area are now ordered to stay indoors. What should people do? Well, this means that there is a possibility that radioactive material could have dispersed to this area. Now, the radioactive material will be emitting radiation. Of course, you do not want to be exposed to that. Therefore, you must remain indoors. Of course, the walls of the house will protect you, as long as you keep the radioactive material from entering inside the house. If you were outside, your clothing could have radioactive material stuck to it. So if you are now outdoors and are trying to get indoors, please dust off